Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. This is Joey, and I am an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is 3/30/20. 5 days ago, by the grace of God, I celebrated 18 months sober. So, two things before I get going. First of all, congratulations to everybody, all the chip getters, all the newcomers. Boy, anybody within that first month. I mean, this is some of the hardest part right now for you guys. So what a blessing to you guys for being in this program and accepting to get on in. Just an awesome thing. Everybody who's collecting chips for years, congratulations. Just a remarkable, miracle really for everybody in here who's celebrating some sober time. As I go through my meeting tonight, God is a part of my story. I don't mean to offend anybody if you do not believe in God, but as I say, God, please replace it with higher power, and we should be all good. And I will also share, quite honestly, that I have one goal each and every day, and that goal for me is to make sure that I fall asleep sober, so that I can get another day the following day as we take it one day at a time. I do have a sponsor. His name is Ryan. He's got a sponsor. His name is Wayne. He's got a sponsor. His name is Jim. He's got a sponsor. His name is Bill Wilson. No, I don't think it's Bill Wilson, but it's pretty far up that chain if you guys were kind of taking a look at that. Tonight, hopefully, I'll be able to share a little bit of experience, strength, and hope with my story as I go on. First of all, early days for me started at about 13 years old. And at 13 years old, I remember going out with a buddy and just kind of, tooling around town, coming across a bottle of vodka and coming across like a little carton of orange juice and mixing that up to about 75 to 25%. And as you all know, that's probably not the appropriate mixture ratio for those two. We drank, I got shit-faced, I got home somehow, I threw up all over my sister's room, and for the first time in my life, at 13 years old, I was unmanageable. My life had become unmanageable at 13 years old. Then at 15-year-old, I started going to football parties. It's a big thing in our town. We would go to football parties, we'd go into the back gate, and they would be selling these little red Solo cups for $5 each. And $5 each is nothing in the cup. No, but there's 3 kegs back there, and we could fill them up as many times as we'd like. We'd also were doing keg stands at 15 years old. Doing a keg stand at 15 years old, getting shit-faced enough where beer's pouring out of me onto my shirt. 15 years old, life completely unmanageable at that stage. 16 years old, we would doctor our driver's license. We would doctor the driver's license, go to a nearby town called New Rochelle, New York, that's bopping with a couple of different, colleges and junior colleges. And of course, with that comes bars. So there's a whole row of bars on North Avenue, New Rochelle, New York. And we would go there with our doctored IDs at 16 years old on a school night, Thursday night, go in there, drink up at the bar, drink as much as we can, come home smelling like beer, going to school the next morning smelling like beer. At 16 years old, my life was unmanageable. 17 years old, I was getting carried in my house because I could not walk by 2 of my friends. I remember my mother screaming, "Who is that?" She didn't even know who it was. "Who is that?" She saw my 2 friends carrying me in. "Who is it?" They're like, "It's Joey." That's how unmanageable my life was still at that time. And then this is where it probably took a little bit of a turn in terms of like, getting up to next level stuff, unmanageability stuff, because this wasn't like me necessarily. At 19 years old, I went to a college party, and a good buddy of mine looked at me. He took a pack of cigarettes. He threw the pack of cigarettes at me. And I said, "I don't smoke." "Mike, I don't smoke." I threw it back. He goes, "It's not the cigarettes you want. Take it again." He hands it to me again. He goes, "You're going to go upstairs. You're going to go to the bathroom on the top floor on the left. You're going to lock that door. You're going to fill out this little baggie of white stuff, and you're going to put it on there. You're going to put a little line, and then you're going to take that rolled up dollar bill. You can do a line of that." At 19 years old, already in that stage, life completely unmanageable. And I didn't realize that at the time. At the time, I didn't understand that I was wired for relief, that if there was something wrong about me, if I didn't like myself, I needed to validate myself through these things. I needed to validate through alcohol, or I needed to validate through drugs, or I needed to validate through women. But I had to figure something out to make me feel better about myself. And it took me a long time to finally get to that place. A good many years, though, I was okay for a while, through my 20s. Things were okay. And it didn't become unmanageable again until probably like the mid-2000s. And in the mid-2000s, my dad got real sick. My marriage was falling apart. I got diagnosed with bipolar. Things were really kind of unraveling for me in a big sort of way. So at that point, I started once again drinking very heavily. The controlled drinking was over at that point. And it wasn't about that anymore. It was about seeking the relief. It was about, I didn't like where I was or what was going on. I was wired that way. So I remember this one story in particular, with my dad, who was struggling through cancer. I was sitting bedside with him, and as I was sitting with him one night, it was just me and him in the room, and he was losing his function of his organs, and he was basically, I mean, he was just on pain meds to just kind of like, palliative care, right? He was just kind of like, let's just get him to where he's going to go, and he'll be fine. So I just sat next to his bed, and he like kind of popped up a little bit. He goes, "Joey, where's Joey?" And I said, "Dad, I'm right here." And he said, No, the baby. Where's the baby? I said, "Dad, what's going on? The baby. Where is the baby?" And it was really hard to see him that way, and I didn't know where he was going with it. So I remember leaving that night. I think my mom came up after me, and I went downstairs to the chapel. And there's in the hospital, they've got a little chapel, and they got a little book in the chapel, and you can kind of write messages to people. And I just wrote in that book, and I said, "God, please take my father. God, please take him. I don't want to see him struggle. I don't want to see him suffer like this anymore." So I went home that night. I fell asleep. It was really tough to fall asleep that night. 4:00 in the morning, I got a phone call from my sister. She said, "Dad died." I had to go up to the hospital. So we all went up to the hospital together. We said our final goodbyes. I came back to my house that morning, pardon me. And as I got back to my house that morning, I walked up the stairs, and my wife was standing at the top of the stairs in the kitchen, and she had a pregnancy test. And we were not trying for kids. And we had trouble with our first two kids even having them. And she's sitting there with a pregnancy test. She goes, "Guess what?" And I said, "Well, you just eliminated a lot of guesses for me." And she dropped it. She goes, "We're pregnant." And at that point, I realized that was the first time for me really understanding that there is a higher power, and watched him work in that moment. Because 12 hours before that, my father was telling me, "Where's the baby? Where's the baby?" 12 hours later, I found out my wife was pregnant. So my father died. My ex-wife and I were basically getting a divorce and separated with a baby on the way. And I got into, a situation at home where I understood that she was seeing other guys and all of this was happening, started throwing shit around the house. I ended up getting arrested for it. And I was just trying to take all this in. Again, life completely unmanageable, and it got that way really, really fast again. I did have to do some jail time because of the stuff that I did, throwing shit around the house and breaking a window and stuff. And luckily, I was actually in, it was like a work release program. So 7 a.m. I get to leave, 7 p.m. I came back, and I did this for 30 days. But when I left at 7 a.m., I went and I started drinking. The problem was, if you come back drunk, if they breathalyze you or dog sniffs it out or whatever the case is, then you're like rearrested. And now I don't get to do work furlough. Then I got to go in to jail. And this is how badly my life was at the time, how unmanageable things were for me. I didn't even give a shit. I still drank. I drank every day that I left. And I just rolled the dice, and I didn't even care. And that's how unmanageable alcohol had made my life at that time. Got through that. I was a single dad with a drinking problem. And I thought to myself, I got to do something about this. I can't rely on anybody else as I go through this. Well, I didn't know about that it was a disease. I didn't realize that I had an allergy. I didn't understand that there could have been that facet of what was going on in my life. See, right now I have 50% of the time with my kids that I did everything I can to make sure I was sober. And then the other 50%, I did everything I can to make sure I was completely shit-faced because I was so lonely and really needed to seek that relief again because of the things that I had went through. Well, I thought, let me try a program. Let me try Celebrate Recovery, which I did. So for 6 months, I stayed sober. Now, Celebrate Recovery is a great program. I had nothing against this program at all, but that was it. That was my only part of the program. I had nothing else at all. So I went 6 months. I was sober. I met a girl. And that didn't go well. because once again, I found out that she was with somebody else. I relapsed. I relapsed hard. When I relapsed, basically into 2020, February 2020 at this point, I had like two different charges within a week of each other, okay? One was an assault charge that I got pegged on. Her son had attacked me because I tried to get her not to drive drunk. That's the quick version of it. I don't want to just go into everything with it, but he then came after me at 18 years old, and I just basically went like this because I know I didn't want to hit him. I didn't want to hit him. And then I just covered up and things were fine. And then my daughter comes out. When my daughter comes out into the garage, he starts moving over to her to push her in. And then that's when I had to get in between the two, which I did. And then that's when I ended up getting arrested for it. A week later, because I was so distraught about everything that had happened, watching my kids watch me get taken away in handcuffs, I was driving drunk with my kids in the car. Okay. So within a week of each other, I had two different things happen to me that were basically major legal issues for me. And at that point, I had lost everything. When they took my kids out of the car, that moment, I had lost my house, my kids, my car, my job, my money, everything. I didn't want to live. I had no desire to be alive. None. I thought, I'm like 48 years old. What am I doing? Like, I'll never get out of this. I mean, I'm not a kid where I could work my way through this again. I remember walking up and down the street, totally shit-faced, 2 bottles of Crown in, just walking across the street, waiting for somebody to hit me. Cars flying by me. My hat flying off, people beeping their horn. A guy finally getting out of his car, bringing me over to the sidewalk. What are you doing, man? Do you want me to call someone? My mom's was right up the block. He brought me over to my mother's. And I said, well, I'm not very good at that, so I'm going to try something else. So I took a bottle of pills, trazodone, took a huge bottle, and I said, I'm going to swallow every one of these trazodones, the sleeping medication, and I'm going to sit by the pool, and I'm going to fall asleep by the pool. With any luck, I'll wake up dead. With any luck. I never got out of the bedroom because I passed out. I never got in the bedroom because I was like throwing up all the Crown that I had already been drinking. Blood coming out of my puke. Next day, it was that moment again where my father saw a baby before we even knew a baby was existing. It was a footprints in the sand moment for me. That footprints in the sand moment where something came down and said, you got to do something. There's something you need to do. And I got on the phone with detox. I got into detox, and I was into detox for about 3 weeks. After I was in detox, I said to myself, I've got to get into rehab. And it was like this, it was a whole different me of where I was just 4 weeks later. It took 37 years for me to ask for help and to get in these programs. 37 years from my first drink to finally get into a program. You know, and they always say the 3 hardest things to say is, I was wrong, I need help, and anonymity. No, I'm only kidding, not anonymity. Anyway, thought I'd lighten the mood for a minute there. When I was in recovery, it was right in COVID. So everything was like, you know, in this, like, it was just in this vacuum. Okay, so we have 14 guys in our house. It was 40 guys in the whole recovery center. We have 14 guys in our house, and we were doing everything pretty much in that house. Okay. Also, this is my first introduction to AA. And I got to tell you, from the minute I didn't want to go to AA, I never really, I just, you know, I didn't think it would help me. Of course, what the fuck did I know, right? But I got in there. Once I went in, I'm not kidding you, from like the first 2 meetings I was in AA, I said to myself, this is for me. This program is for me. I mean, everything about it, I appreciated. Everything about it. I appreciated, you know, the time that everybody was celebrating. I appreciated the stories that were shared. I appreciated the fact that I was able to relate to so many people in there. I didn't feel so fucked up. You know, I didn't feel like I was the one who was screwing up all the time. That, like, how did I live a life like that? Like, you know, I would have that shame and that guilt. That shame and that guilt started to go away because I got to talk about it, because I heard others talk about it. That shame and that guilt started to turn into vulnerability, where I was able to talk about my past and be okay with it. I was able to do some things, and try to help other people. I mean, this program of recovery was about getting a sponsor, right? I got one. It was about speaking when asked. I did that. It was about reading when asked. I did that. It was about the steps, getting in the books, the meetings, therapy, group counseling, a trusted counsel, which I call my best friends that I could go look for, talk to whenever I need to, and they're there for me. They have helped me make every single decision in my life over the last 18 months. There's a lot of decisions I don't even make. They make it for me. And that's true. So this way, I know that I can't do something wrong, that they're there to help me. But that's a part of, my program. Faith, God, Jesus, church, prayer. Prayer is such an important part of my program. It allowed me, once again, to go through all those resources that I had. And that was my new relief. That was how I was relieving any issues that I had with myself. It was through healthy ways. It wasn't through the toxic behavior of drugs, of alcohol, of trying to validate myself to somebody else, through a bad relationship. And all of this came through acceptance. Acceptance in AA is such a big part of this group. It's such a big part of this program. If you haven't read it, please go to 417 and go read all the parts on acceptance. I won't do it now because I know we're up against it a little bit on certain things. But acceptance, what it does is it allows me to be in a situation in my life where that's accepted, okay? Rather than have expectations for where I ought to be. Expectations are resentments under construction. When I have expectations of somebody and they don't follow through, you know what that does to me? I have a resentment now. What the fuck? You didn't do what I asked you to do. Now I have a resentment. And guess what? Like one of the number one reasons for relapse is resentment. Resentment is like the number one thing people relapse for. So finally, I'll say this about like in terms of the steps and like growing through all those steps. When I go through those steps, for me, that's when a lot of that healing happened. When we're able to crush some of that past, understand some of it because of the fears that I had, and all of it started to make a little bit more sense, and all of it became a little bit more palatable for me. This is something that I was able to do, and I was able to release some of that guilt, release some of that shame, and make sure that I continued, on my program, so that this way I don't get tripped up over it. We always say that we have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. Well, that's where God comes in for me, and through others, through their higher power, right? When I'm right with God, I'm right with my program. Okay, when I'm right with God, I'm right with my program. And I know that there are times where He's got to still do things in me before He could do great things through me, and that has to happen. And I've got to be accepting of that. I've got to understand that He still loves me and wants the best for me. That's why I've got to turn over my will to Him. And I cannot control that. Step 3 in the 12 steps, right? If I trust God and I believe in faith and hope, it's easier for me to turn over my will to God. And that makes my program right. They say faith without works is dead. That's said in the Bible, and they say that in the big book. So I know I've got to work this program. Okay, this program has to be worked. If I don't work the program, I'm not going to get anything out of it. Recovery doesn't happen in a microwave. It just doesn't. And if I'm not working towards my recovery, I'm working towards my relapse. See, there's no finish line in sobriety. It's ongoing, right? I heard this in rehab, and I thought it was really interesting. But I will never allow somebody or something to get me to level down from a level I already leveled up on. And I thought it was a really interesting, it's always stuck with me since rehab. I will not level down from a place I've already been at. I'm going to stay on the level up on that. And then I'll finish with this, guys. For me, it took a long time through rehab to really fully get this like redemptive arc in my recovery. And it was just recently. Okay. It was just recently. So it doesn't come right away. It takes some time, you know, and I'm learning that. I mean, at 18 months, listen, I'm real proud of it. There's no doubt about it, but I got a long way to go. There's a long way to go to continue with my sobriety. There's a long way to go to continue with my recovery. And I could tell you that, you know, there's so much more to my story that's unwritten. When I tell this again, a year from now, it's going to be different. The beginning will be the same. The backside, it's going to be a little bit different because I'll be deeper into this program. So, all right, I'm going to just share this and then be finished. The promises of AA are on page 84. Oftentimes they are known as the 9-step promises. And this one says that our promises are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but they will materialize if you work for them. So the one thing that I can take from this program is it's got to be worked, and make sure that you stick around until the miracle happens. Thank you so much for letting me be of service.